Have you ever looked back at one single moment in your life and realized it changed everything? My name's Tom. I'm almost 70 now, but this story isn't about today. It's about what happened when I was 25. When I learned that love can heal you and destroy you, all in the same breath. It started with a birthday and a prophecy I thought was just a joke. I turned 71 last spring, but sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still smell the Carolina rain from my 25th birthday. Back then, life felt like a promise that couldn't break. I had a steady job at the sawmill, a girl I loved more than life itself, and a heart full of blind faith. Her name was Claire. She was 23, with freckles that danced when she laughed. We lived in a small town just outside Asheville, North Carolina. Everybody knew everybody, and secrets never lasted long, except the one that nearly destroyed me. It all started the morning of my birthday. The boys from the mill surprised me with a few beers and a crooked cake. Later that evening, my friends, Lisa and Jordan, a couple from church, showed up at my place with a strange grin. "Happy birthday, Tommy," Lisa said. "We got you something special." I remember the little envelope she handed me. It was lavender and smelled faintly of sage. Inside was a card that read, "One free session with Madame Celeste, spiritual reader and medium." I laughed out loud. "Y'all are kidding, right? You know I don't believe in that stuff." But they weren't joking. "She's good," Lisa said. "Told me I'd meet my husband within 3 days, and I did." I rolled my eyes, but tucked the card into my wallet. Claire thought it was hilarious. "Oh, come on, baby," she said that night. "You might as well go. Maybe she'd tell you when you're gonna get that promotion." We laughed and kissed under the porch light while the rain started to fall. I never imagined how that little joke would tear open my whole world. A week later, I drove out to Madame Celeste's tiny house at the edge of town. It was one of those weather-worn places, half hidden by overgrown ivy and Spanish moss. Wine chimes whispered as I stepped onto the porch. Inside smelled like incense and old wood. She was an older woman, maybe 60, with silver hair and eyes like storm clouds. "Sit, child," she said, her accent soft but firm. I sat. She didn't ask me anything, just stared for a while, as if she was looking through me. Then she spoke. "You think you know your life," she said, "but within 7 days, you will see that you've been living someone else's dream." I laughed nervously. "What's that supposed to mean?" She didn't answer. She just reached across the table, touched my wrist, and said, "When the truth comes, don't run from it." I left that place unsettled. On the drive home, I told myself it was all nonsense. But her words stuck to me like the Carolina humidity. That evening, I told Claire about it. She laughed until tears rolled down her cheeks. "Tommy, you're too easy to mess with," she said. "Living someone else's dream?" "Please," I tried to laugh too, but deep down, something felt off. The next few days were ordinary: work, dinner, laughter. Except for one night when she came home later than usual. Said she was helping her sister with something. I believed her. I always believed her. Then came the 7th day. It was a Saturday. I woke up early to surprise Claire with breakfast, pancakes, her favorite. Her phone was on the counter, buzzing softly. I didn't mean to look, God knows I didn't, but the screen lit up. A message preview. It read, "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you." The name beneath it made my chest tighten. It was Mark. Mark was my coworker, my friend. I froze. My first thought was that it had to be a mistake. Then another message appeared, "He'll never find out." I promise, that was the moment everything inside me cracked. I remember standing there, holding a spatula in my hand, staring at those words until they blurred. The pancakes burned. Claire walked into the kitchen, her hair still messy from sleep. She smiled. "Something smells good." And then she saw my face. "Tommy," she asked, her smile fading. I handed her the phone. For a second, she just stared at the screen, then her eyes filled with panic. "I can explain," she started. But I didn't want to hear explanations, not yet. All the air had been sucked out of the room. I walked out onto the porch without saying a word. The rain had started again, light and cold. Behind me, I could hear her crying, but it sounded far away, like thunder on the horizon. For hours, I sat there, watching the storm roll in. Mark's name kept flashing in my head like lightning. I thought about every joke we'd shared, every lunch break we'd spent side by side. And I thought about the woman inside, the one I was ready to marry. When I finally went back in, she was sitting at the table, hands trembling. "Tommy, please," she said. It didn't mean anything. That line, "it didn't mean anything," still makes my stomach twist, even now. I wanted to shout. Instead, I just asked, "How long?" She whispered, "A few months." The words hit harder than any punch I've ever taken. I left that day with nothing but my truck keys and the clothes on my back. I drove until I ran out of gas, somewhere along Route 64. That's where I sat for hours, watching the sunset bleed across the sky, thinking about the fortune teller's words. "You've been living someone else's dream." She was right. Everything I thought was mine, my love, my plans, my future, had been built on someone else's truth. For a long time, I hated both of them, Claire and Mark, but mostly, I hated myself. For not seeing it, for believing so blindly. I spent months drifting, couch to couch, town to town, until one day, I found myself standing by a lake near Hendersonville, watching the water ripple under the morning sun, and for the first time, I felt still, no anger, no noise, just silence. That was the moment I realized something simple. Sometimes, the breaking is the blessing. But that's not the end of my story, not by far. Because that lake, that quiet place, was where I met someone who changed everything. I stayed by that lake for hours, just sitting on the hood of my old Ford, letting the wind dry the salt on my face. There was a small diner across the road, the kind that still had neon signs and coffee for 50 cents. I walked in like a ghost, the bell above the door jingled, and the waitress looked up. She had kind eyes and silver hair tied in a messy bun. "Rough day?" she asked. I just nodded. She poured me a cup of coffee and said, "Honey, you look like you've been through the war." Something like that, I whispered. Her name was Martha. She owned the place with her brother. I didn't know it then, but that diner would become my second home. For weeks, I came back every morning. Sometimes I'd talk to Martha. Sometimes I'd just sit and stare out the window. She never pushed, never pried, just poured coffee and smiled like she understood something I didn't. One morning, she set a plate of pancakes in front of me. "On the house," she said softly, "pancakes Claire's favorite." For a moment, I almost pushed the plate away, but something told me to stay. I took a bite, and somehow, it didn't taste like pain anymore. It tasted like starting over. That's how healing begins, not in some big moment of clarity, but in small kindnesses from strangers. Martha became my first friend after the storm. She told me stories about her late husband, about the year she spent alone before reopening the diner. And every time she spoke, there was a calm in her voice that I wanted to borrow. One rainy evening, she asked, "Tommy, do you ever go to church?" I shook my head. "Haven't stepped inside one since my mama's funeral," she smiled. "Then maybe it's time." That Sunday, I went. Not because I found faith again, but because I needed peace. The preacher talked about forgiveness. Said it wasn't a gift you give to others, it's the one you give yourself. I cried that day, for the first time since Claire. I let myself fall apart. After the service, I walked outside into the rain, lifted my face to the sky, and whispered, "I forgive you." It wasn't for her. It was for me. The next months passed quietly. I started fixing things around the diner, helping Martha's brother with repairs. It felt good to work with my hands again, to build something that didn't hurt. Then, one morning, a young woman walked in, maybe 30, maybe younger. She had auburn hair and a notebook full of scribbles. She ordered black coffee and sat by the window. Martha leaned over and whispered, "That's Emily, she's a writer. Moved here last month." I didn't think much of it. But over the next few weeks, she kept coming in. Always the same booth, always the same coffee. We started talking, first about the weather, then about books, then about life. I told her I used to love photography. She smiled and said, "Then why'd you stop?" I didn't have an answer. She looked at me and said, "You should start again." Some moments deserve to be remembered twice. That night, I pulled my old camera from the closet for the first time in years. The film was dusty, the strap frayed, but it still felt right in my hands. I started taking pictures again, of trees, rain, reflections in puddles. Emily began joining me sometimes. We'd walk by the lake, Talk about everything and nothing. I told her about Claire once. She didn't flinch or judge, she just listened. And then she said something I lines never forget. You can lose what wasn't yours to keep. That line stayed with me. The months rolled by, and I began to feel like myself again, or maybe someone new. I stopped counting the days since the betrayal. Stopped wondering if Claire ever regretted it. Some ghosts don't need answers, they just need distance. Emily and I grew closer. She was light in all the places I'd forgotten existed. Sometimes, when she laughed, I'd feel that ache, the one that comes when something broken starts to heal. One evening, we sat on the dock, watching the sun dip below the trees. She asked, "Do you ever think about what that psychic meant?" I smiled, "Every day. And what did you figure out?" She said, "That she was right," I answered. I was living someone else's dream. But now, I think I'm finally living mine. Emily smiled and rested her head on my shoulder. Silence felt easy again. The lake shimmered gold, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I ended up buying a small cabin near that lake. Didn't have much, just a porch, a bed, and a few old photographs. But it was enough. Martha said she'd miss me, but promised to visit every Sunday with pie. And she did. Life slowed down in the best possible way. I started taking pictures for the local paper, landscapes, festivals, small town faces. Emily helped me write captions. We never labeled what we were. Love didn't need names at that age. It was quieter, deeper, built from pieces that once broke. Years passed. The diner changed owners, but Martha's coffee mug still hung on the wall. Emily published her first book. She called it The Week That Saved My Life. When I read the dedication page, I saw my name there. To Tommy, who taught me that some endings are just beginnings in disguise, I cried like a fool that night. Now, sitting here decades later, telling you all this, I realize how right she was. Pain doesn't vanish, it transforms. And sometimes, what feels like the end is just life redirecting you home. If you re-listening to this and you've been broken, remember, you not done. You're just beginning again, in a different shape. And maybe, just maybe, one day you'll look back, like I am now, and smile. Because the worst thing that ever happened to you might be the reason you found the best part of yourself. That's what Madame Celeste tried to tell me all those years ago. Don't run from the truth. I didn't understand it then. But now, I do. The truth didn't ruin me, it rebuilt me. And if I had to live it all again, the love, the betrayal, the loss, I would. Because it led me here, to peace, to purpose. To the life that was always meant to be mine. It's strange how years can fold into one another like pages in an old book. One day you're 25, heartbroken and lost. The next, you're 70, sitting on a porch swing with a cup of tea, wondering where all that time went. I built a quiet life after Emily. We spent 20 wonderful years together before she passed, peacefully, in her sleep, on a rainy evening, the kind of night I used to hate. Now, I find comfort in the sound of rain. It reminds me that even storms can be gentle. After she was gone, I thought I'd be broken again, but instead, I found gratitude. Because love, real love, doesn't end, it just changes rooms. Some mornings, I still walk by the lake. The water looks the same, though my reflection doesn't. I see an old man now, slower, softer, but still holding that camera. Still chasing the light. Last summer, something unexpected happened. I was driving into town when I noticed a small, wooden sign by the road. It said, Madame Celeste, Readings and Guidance. I laughed out loud. I hadn't heard that name in almost 50 years. I pulled over without thinking. The little house looked different, repainted, but the wind chimes were the same. The same melody that once haunted me. I hesitated for a long time before knocking. A young woman answered, maybe in her 30s. She looked surprised to see me. I'm sorry, I said. I used to know someone named Celeste who lived here. The woman smiled. That was my grandmother. She passed a few years back. I nodded slowly, feeling something twist inside me. She ever tell you she scared the daylights out of a man once? I joked. The woman laughed. Grandma had a way of doing that. Then she said, would you like to come in? I still do reading sometimes. I wasn't sure why, but I said yes. Inside, it smelled exactly the same old incense and cedar wood. The old crystal ball sat on a shelf, gathering dust. We sat across from each other, just like before. She looked at me for a long moment and said, "You've carried a lot of stories." I smiled. "You have no idea." She closed her eyes and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she said, "Grandma left a note for whoever found their way back here one day." Want to hear it? My heart stopped for a second. She reached into a drawer and pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age. On the front, in faded ink, were the words, "For the one who returned." She opened it carefully and read aloud. It said, "Sometimes, we must lose what we think is ours to discover what was meant for us all along. Pain will visit you, but it will not stay. Let it pass through you like rain through the trees. And when you finally understand, come home." I sat there in silence, tears rolling down my cheeks. The young woman asked softly, "Did she mean something to you?" I nodded. She changed everything. We talked for a while. I told her my story, about Claire, about the betrayal, the lake, the diner, Emily. She listened quietly, eyes glistening. When I finished, she said, "Grandma would have been proud. You didn't run from the truth." Those words hit me deep. I realized, right then, that I had finally come full circle. The boy who walked into that house all those years ago was gone. But the man sitting there, he had learned to live. Before I left, I asked if I could take a picture of the wind chimes. She nodded. The camera clicked, freezing that moment in time. Later, when I developed the photo, I noticed something odd. In the reflection of the window, faint but clear, there was a shape, a woman's face, smiling. Maybe it was a trick of the light, or maybe she really was there, watching, approving. That night, I went back to my cabin and sat by the fire. The rain began again, steady and soft. I thought about all the versions of myself I'd been: the dreamer, the fool, the broken man, the survivor. And I whispered to the dark, "Thank you," not just to Celeste, or Emily, or even Claire, but to life itself, for the heartbreaks, the lessons, the second chances. I closed my eyes and felt something like peace settle in my chest. You see, the prophecy wasn't a warning, it was a gift. Through loss, you'll find truth. Through truth, you'll find yourself. Now, when young folks ask me for advice, I tell them this: don't be afraid when life falls apart. Sometimes, that's just the sound of it rearranging into something better. And when love ends, don't call it failure, call it transformation. Because love never truly dies. It simply changes hands. I still visit the lake every Sunday morning. I bring 2 cups of coffee, one for me, one for Emily, and I watch the sunlight dance on the water, knowing that somewhere out there, she's smiling back. When the wind moves through the trees, I sometimes hear it, that same whisper from long ago. Don't run from the truth. I never did again. And that, my friend, is the story of how a foolish birthday gift became the greatest blessing of my life. Now, I sit here in my old rocking chair, recording this for whoever might need to hear it. Maybe it's you, sitting alone tonight, feeling like everything's falling apart. Maybe your heart's been broken too. If so, listen to me. The pain won't last forever. It'll carve space in you for something better. You'll love again. You'll trust again. You lines wake up one day and realize that the ache has turned into a memory, and the memory into wisdom. I've seen enough years to know. Every ending hides a beginning. And every loss hides a lesson. That's what my 71 years have taught me. If I could speak to that young man from long ago, the one holding his girlfriend's phone, heart shattered, I'd tell him, "You'll be okay." I'd tell him, the rain will stop, and one day, you'll thank it, because without that storm, there'd be no lake, no diner, no Emily, no story to tell, and what a shame that would be. Sometimes I wonder how different my life might have been if I had gone to that psychic. If Lisa hadn't given me that silly gift card, if Claire hadn't cheated. But then I realize, I wouldn't change a thing. Because the man I am now was born from that pain, and truthfully, I like him better. There's peace in growing old with no bitterness. Only gratitude. I still keep that old camera on the nightstand. It doesn't work anymore, but it doesn't have to. It reminds me that every moment, no matter how fleeting, can be beautiful if you look at it right. Before I go, I'll tell you the last thing Madame Celeste wrote in that letter. At the very bottom, in faded ink, it said, "Every soul you meet is part of your becoming," and I believe that with all my heart. So, if you're hearing this, remember, you're not lost, you're just becoming. The storm that hurts you today might be the light that saves you tomorrow. And when that happens, you'll understand what I finally did. That love and loss are not opposites. They're the same language, spoken by time. I finish my tea, listen to the rain, and smile. Because I lived it all, and it was worth it. Every tear, every heartbreak, every moment, worth it. And that, my friend, is the truth I never ran from again. The tape recorder clicks softly. I clear my throat and smile to myself. Well, kiddo, I say, if you're hearing this, it probably means your old granddad finally learned how to use this darn thing. I laugh quietly. I wanted to leave you something, not money or things, but a story, because one day, when life hits hard, you'll need to remember what I learned the long way. The rain taps against the window, steady as a heartbeat. I look outside at the mist rising over the lake. It still looks the same as it did 50 years ago. Evan, I say softly, you're 17 now. The world's just opening up for you. You'll fall in love. You'll dream big. You'll make mistakes, and that's good. Mistakes are proof that you tried. I pause, listening to the faint hum of the recorder. Let me tell you something your grandma Emily once told me, she said. Love is not about holding on. It's about staying open, even when it hurts. I didn't understand that when I was young. I thought love meant keeping someone close no matter what. But real love, it's letting people be who they are, even if that means they walk away. The chair creaks as I lean back. When I was your age, I thought life was a straight line. School, job, marriage, kids, house. But life doesn't care about straight lines. It moves like the river, winding, bending, finding new paths. And sometimes, you have to lose your footing to find where you truly belong. I chuckle. You probably think I'm just rambling, old and sentimental, but one day, you'll understand. There'll come a moment when your heart breaks, maybe from love, maybe from disappointment, and you'll think it's the end. It won't be. It'll just be life showing you what really matters. The rain grows heavier. I sip my tea and keep talking. Do you know what the happiest day of my life was? It wasn't the day I got married, or when I bought this cabin, or even when Emily said yes. It was the day I forgave, because forgiveness, Evan, is freedom. When you forgive, you stop carrying what's already gone, and that makes room for joy. I look down at the little wooden box on the table beside me. Inside is an old photograph, the one of the wind chimes, and that faint reflection of Madame Celeste. Next to it is a letter addressed to my grandson. After I'm gone, open this, I say quietly into the microphone. There's something inside I want you to see. I kept a piece of the past, not to cling to it, but to remind you that even pain can be beautiful when you survive it. The fire crackles. Outside, the lake mirrors the moonlight. You know, I used to be angry at the rain, I say with a smile. It always seemed to show up when things went wrong, but now I think the rain was just trying to teach me to listen, because every drop carries a story. Maybe that's what life really is, a collection of stories we keep telling until someone learns from them. I take a deep breath. Evan, if you ever fall in love, do it with your whole heart. Don't half-love anyone, not even yourself. Be brave enough to tell the truth, even when it scares you. And if someone breaks your heart, forgive them, but don't forget yourself, because you are worth more than what someone couldn't see. The words come out slower now, softer. I used to think I was cursed when Claire cheated on me, but looking back, it was the best thing that ever happened. It pushed me toward the life I was meant to live, toward Emily, toward peace. I glance at the clock, midnight. It's my birthday again, 72nd, 50 years since that strange woman told me, you're living someone else's dream. I laugh gently. Well, Celeste, I hope you're listening, wherever you are. I finally made it to my own dream. There's a long silence before I speak again. Evan, one day you'll be sitting where I am, gray-haired, looking back. When that day comes, I hope you can say what I'm saying now, that you lived fully, loved deeply, and forgave freely. That's all that really matters. The tape crackles softly as I reach the end. One last thing, kiddo, I whisper. When life feels heavy, go to the lake, sit by the water. Listen to the wind. You lines hear echoes of the people who loved you, even the ones who left. And if you listen close, maybe you'll hear me too. The rain slows to a drizzle. I take a deep breath and press stop. The tape clicks save final, gentle. I place it in the wooden box, right beside the photograph. Then I close the lid. Outside, the clouds part, revealing a faint sunrise. The light spills over the water, golden and calm. I whisper, "Thank you for everything," and for the first time in a long while, I feel Emily's presence beside me, warm, quiet, eternal. The world feels still, complete. And in that moment, I know the prophecy has finally come true. Because I'm not living someone else's dream anymore, I'm living mine. The wind moves through the trees, and the chimes sing their familiar song. It sounds like home, it sounds like forever, it sounds like peace. And that's how I'll leave this story, not with an ending, but with a beginning. Because every goodbye is just another way of saying, I'll see you again. The tape rewinds softly. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolls one last time. Rain turns to sunlight, and the old man smiles. In another room, years later, a boy opens a wooden box. Inside, he finds the tape, the photograph, and the letter. He presses play. His grandfather's voice fills the room, soft and steady. "Hey there, kiddo." The boy listens, eyes wet, as the voice speaks of love, loss, and second chances. When the tape ends, he looks out the window at the same lake, shimmering under the same Carolina sun. He smiles. Somewhere in the wind, a chime rings, faint, melodic. He whispers, "I hear you, Grandpa," and maybe, just maybe, he really does. Because stories like that never die, they just find new hearts to live in. The camera sits on the shelf, its lens still facing the light. A single photograph lies beside it, the lake, the porch, the sunrise. On the back, written in a shaky old hand, are the words, "Through the truth, we are reborn." The boy places it on the windowsill. The sunlight catches the image, glowing gold. Outside, the wind carries the faint sound of laughter, or maybe memory. Either way, it feels alive, and the story continues. Not in the past, not in sorrow, but in everything that follows. Because when one heart heals, it leaves a map for another to find its way. And so, the prophecy lives on. The birthday, the heartbreak, the lake, the love. All of it, part of something larger, something lasting. The voice on the tape fades into the wind. Don't run from the truth, it whispers one last time. And the world, gentle and bright, listens.